To start this project, we're going to go up to Create, and we're going to create a new document. So we're going to start fresh. The name of our document is going to be Hinge. That's what we're going to end up with. And then it's going to create our workspace, and we're going to start working on our first project. Now, all you're going to have to do is follow along, and you're going to create the hinge correctly. Make sure you add all the relationships and all of the dimensions that I add. So the first place we're going to start is we're going to start on the front plane. So I'm going to click the front plane, turn it to the front. So I'm looking at it and start with sketch. I'm going to draw one simple shape. I'm going to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to get a corner rectangle. I'm going to start from the origin, and I am going to drag up and to the left. Now, it doesn't matter exactly where those numbers stop, but what we're looking for is 100 millimeters tall and 45 millimeters wide. So I'm going to go and use my dimension tool and set that at 100 and 5. And zoom out a little bit so I can see the whole thing. Again, even if you hit those numbers exactly by dragging, make sure you dimension it so that all of our lines are black and fully defined. We're going to go ahead and accept that. And now we're going to use this to create three-dimensional material. So one of the things I like to do is I get on my View tab and I go to my isometric view. My isometric view shows me my front, my top, and my right side. There are other corners, as you can see, but we want to see front, top, right, okay? Kind of the position we start in. I'm going to select sketch 1 in the feature tree to show that it's orange, and then I'm going to click the button right here that says Extrude. Now what it's automatically going to do is it's going to start creating material going forward, and for whatever reason it picks 25 millimeters. Okay, you'll notice that we've got some options under here that we will be messing with in terms of whether we're creating new material, we're adding material, we're removing material, and intersect is an advanced concept that we will deal with another time. So what we want to do, and this is a real simple extrude that we're going to do first, is we're going to go 5 millimeters deep. We want a thin plate. This is going to be the part of our hinge that attaches to the door or the door frame. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this is we're going to create a bunch of different features, different extrudes, extrude removes in this project. You're going to see fillets, you're going to see chamfers, again, terms that we'll learn about a little bit later. But all of them just kind of number themselves randomly. So one of the really cool things you can do is as you're about to create this, we can actually name it. And so if you click the little pencil tool next to Extrude 1, we're going to change this to Plate. This will be, again, the mounting plate portion of our hinge. And when we accept it, you'll notice it says Plate. Sketch 1 is grayed out above it, just so that we are clear. If we ever needed to make a change to Sketch 1 or that initial size, all I have to do is double click on it, and it's going to go back in time to that point where I could then change these dimensions or adjust things. And I would accept it, and it would roll my changes forward. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the tube part of our hinge that we will add some features to. We will also create it slightly differently this time, though. So this seems weird, but just go and follow with me. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to click the top surface of the plate that I created. So I may need to zoom in, but it's that surface right there, okay? Because that's where I actually want to draw. I don't always have to draw on one of these imaginary planes. I can also draw on surfaces, and then we're going to do that a lot today. So I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to start a sketch, and I'm going to look at it from the top view. Now I'm going to show you a cool little trick based on what we're drawing that will actually, I will just draw the shape and it will be fully defined. So check this out. We have this is 5 millimeters thick. What I want is a 10 millimeter diameter tube that's attached to the end of this plate. So all I'm going to do is take my center point circle, I'm going to put the center on this point, and I'm going to put the other end on that point. Boom, it is fully defined. And the fact is even if I added my dimension here, all I'm going to get is a grayed out, already defined dimension that I can't change. So I don't really even need that there. I have black lines fully just by placing these 2 points. And I want to stay with that because if for some reason I decide, oh, no, I want to change the dimension of this, okay, this will stay with the center of it on the corner and the other end on the edge. So that's exactly what I want. So that's my sketch 2, and I'm going to accept it. Because I know I'm going to change this into a 3-dimensional shape, you'll go here and notice my circle is truly on this surface. Even though it hangs off, that's really not a problem. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to click Extrude. You're going to notice that it's going to want to make material up. I don't want to make material up. I want to go the other way. So I'm going to click this button right here that switches the direction to make it to start to go down. The other thing I want to do, number 1, is I want to make sure it's on Add. Now, based on the fact that our shapes overlap, it should automatically go to Add, but just double check that it is there. Okay, and the last thing I want to do is I actually am going to extrude this in a different way. We did a blind extrude before where we said just go this distance. We didn't care what was there. We didn't care what surfaces were there. We didn't care what anything else was there. Just go this distance. Okay, blindly go 5 millimeters. Instead of doing that this time, we're going to actually drop this down and say up to face. Okay, and what that means is I'm going to actually use my arrow keys. I'm going to push my, oh, sorry, I don't want to change that. Up to face is right. I'm going to click into this space right here, and I'm going to use my arrow key to spin my view slightly so I can click the bottom end of that. Okay, and what it's saying is regardless of how tall it is, go from the face I drew it on to the face there. Okay, and what that does is if I was to go back and change 100 millimeters to 95 millimeters, I wouldn't have to change my length of my tube because I could have just extruded it 100 millimeters and it would look right. Okay, but I pick face there, so it goes from the face I drew it on to the face I selected always, regardless of how far apart they are. So if I make a change later, that should still line up just the way it should. Okay, and as I've referred to this before, this is going to be the tube of the hinge. So I'm going to go ahead and label it tube so I know exactly what it is and accept that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go ahead and put a hole in my tube. So I'm going to click the same surface. And I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to click Sketch. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on the circle. Now you might go, well, why didn't you just draw another circle and extrude a tube? Well, if you remember, the corner of the plate was here as well. By doing this as a separate step, I'm going to cut that out as well. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my center point circle, and I'm going to go drift around, I can follow this down. What I'm looking for is that center point. And as you can see, I found it. And I even have a little bitty gray square next to my cursor that looks like it has a little donut in it that tells me I'm making concentric circles. Okay, concentric circles. Okay, that means they have the same center. Okay, kind of like the word implies. So I click there, and I pull out, and I click again. I'm then going to grab my dimension tool, and I'm going to make this 6 millimeters. And that gives me, again, a fully defined shape. I'm going to go back to my isometric view. I'm going to click Sketch 3. I'm going to click Extrude. And this time I am going to change, instead of Add, I'm going to click Remove. Now, Remove is a great tool. This is actually going to take material away. And so instead of creating stuff, I'm taking it away. It's like I'm drilling a hole throughout this whole tube. So I am going to change this again. Instead of a blind distance, I want it to go through all. That's a really common one for us to use with remove because we just want to go through all. Again, if we change the depth, I could have extrude removed it 100 millimeters, but if I change the height of my hinge, I want the hole to change so that it goes through everything. I also, especially when doing removes where I want to go through all, I want it to merge with all. So it's going to go through everything. And this is going to be the pin hole. Okay, so we're going to use a pin in our hinge to actually make it work. And that's going to be a later video when we do our first assembly. But pinhole, got everything set. Good to go there. I'm going to just use my arrow keys real quick. Make sure, yep, got cut all the way to the bottom. So this one I'm going to show you a new tool. If you were to actually look at a hinge like this sharp corner wouldn't be there. It would be rounded, okay? Mostly because the stress of the door or whatever it is that's hanging on this hinge, sharp corners are a place where things will break. So we want to smooth that out. So here's a cool tool called fillet. We're actually going to do two different fillets at this point. We're going to do kind of an interior fillet where it's going to add material in here to kind of create like a little rounded out part. And we're also going to use fillet in the way it's more traditionally used, where we're going to actually go ahead and round some corners. So first fillet we're going to do is going to be a 2 millimeter. And what I need to do is I need to pick the edge. So I'm again going to use my arrow keys. I'm going to get over here, arrow keys to roll around so I can pick that edge, just that edge, not the whole face, just this edge. And you'll notice it kind of adds some material in there. I accidentally pushed the up arrow over here and changed that to 3, so I'm going to back and change it to 2. So I want that to be 2 millimeters. Okay, and I'm going to change this. This is going to be the tube fillet. I know it's spelled like fillet, like a cut of meat, but it is pronounced fillet. And I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And again, if I rotate up, you can see I've got a nice little rounded corner, making my part look much more professional and likely. I'm going to again click the fillet tool. This time I'm going to set it to 5 millimeters. And I'm going to pick this short little corner, and I'm going to pick this short little corner to round those two corners. All right, at 5 millimeters, and this is going to be the corner fillet. So that I get this overall shape. All right, so this is kind of the shape I need to start with. The next thing I want to do to make this hinge actually a hinge is I need to put some screw holes in it so I can attach it to something that needs to be a hinge. I'm going to actually, now up till now, we've done each feature as a separate thing. So we have the plate, the tube, the pin hole, all of those things that honestly, if I had done it a certain way, a different way, which we can talk about another time, I could actually done that all as one piece, and that's fine. I would have had to add the fillets afterwards, not a big deal. But I'm going to actually, for the first time, do 3 features at once. And the 3 features are going to be my 3 screw holes. All right. So I'm going to click on the front of the plate and start my sketch. I'm going to use a center circle. And I'm going to go ahead and just make 3 circles. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension my first circle. So from the center of the circle to the top edge is going to be 15 millimeters. From the center of the circle to the left edge is also going to be, and I'm going to pull this up here a little bit, 15 millimeters. The diameter of the circle is going to be 8 millimeters. And now the next thing, so you notice this is fully defined. So I'm going to set these up next. What I want to do is I also want the center of the circle to the bottom, the center of this circle to the bottom to be 15 millimeters. And I want the middle hole to be right in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to go 50 millimeters there. There's some other tricks to put stuff in the middle that we can worry about in some other views. Now, I want these all to be the same, and I'm not going to use dimensions anymore. Okay, I'm done with dimensions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the center of the first circle, hold shift, and click the center of the other 2 circles to get those points. And I'm going to make those vertical. So those all line up. Right now, these are all 15 millimeters from the edge. And again, if I needed to make a change, I change 1 dimension. Here's the other thing. I'm going to grab the circle, and I'm going to click each of the circles, and I'm going to make them equal. Now everything's fully defined, and you'll notice it took me 3 dimensions to define this one, and only 1 each on these, okay? Because the side-to-side measurement is controlled by this right here. Again, if I change this, all three screw holes will move around. Okay. The other thing is I have one dimension that controls the diameter of all three circles. So, or all three of my screw holes. So that's great. I now have a fully defined sketch. As you might imagine, I'm going to select the sketch 4. Okay. Go to my 3D view, extrude, remove. I am going to go again through all, merge with all, so I don't have a problem there. It is already headed backwards. You do want to double check that. Every once in a while, softwares like this will still try to remove where there's no material. Onshape usually does a pretty good job, but it's worth that double check to make sure that arrow is pointing backwards and I'm cutting material away. These are my screw holes. I'm going to accept that. And now I've got my screw holes. Now, if you were to look at a hinge, you wouldn't actually see just a solid cylindrical hole. The very top, we chamfer it, meaning we cut it off at like a 45-degree angle. And the reason we do that is when we put screws into the screw holes, we want the head of the screw to sit flat, so we don't want anything sticking up. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Next to fillet is chamfer, and you'll notice this is a straight cut as opposed to a rounded cut. So the distance of the chamfer that we're going to use is 2 millimeters. Okay, so set that to be correct. The entities we want to chamfer is we want to get just the circle that is the top of each hole. And what it's doing is it's going down 2 millimeters and out 2 millimeters and cutting that into a 45-degree. Okay. Now what I can do here is I can rename this. And this is these are the screw chamfers. I don't even have to retype the word if I don't want to. And I will accept those. Those are all good. So I have one more feature that I want to do to the actual hinge body itself. And that is I need to cut some of these away. If you were to actually look at a door hinge, you'll notice that like I'm going to have 4 little tube sections. So 2 of the tube sections are going to be attached to this plate and 2 tube sections are going to be attached to the other one that we'll line up and we'll put a pin down the middle, and that's how we'll create our hinge. So that's the part I'm going to do now. Now the surface I'm going to use is this face right here. And I am going to zoom in on it a little bit better. There we go. Something like that-ish. I'm going to click Sketch. I am going to get a rectangle tool. And I am going to start on this edge. And if I can, I'm going to find the midpoint. Does everybody, hopefully you can see that? I'm finding that midpoint of that line. Okay? And I'm going to drag upward. Now what that just did is you can see now my cut, this is going to be a cut. My cut is going to start right where the plate starts to curve into the tube. That's perfect. That's exactly where I want. It's locked in on there because it started there. This is also exactly in the center of my hinge. So I don't even have to dimension it. You'll notice 2 of my lines are already considered fully defined. I'm going to go ahead and dimension this as 25 millimeters tall. And I am going to dimension this width as 12. As I know that the fillet was 2 millimeters, the tube is 10, so that should bring me right to the edge. You notice there I have a fully defined shape. Now I'm going to do another cut that's exactly the same, but is basically 25 millimeters below that or down here on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool again. I'm going to start on this intersection, and I'm going to bring that out. Now I am going to use, again, to limit the number of dimensioning I have to do, I am going to click this line and this line, and I am going to make them equal. And here's another cool trick. Clicking the same 2 lines, I'm going to also make them vertical. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do the 2 lines. I have to do the 2 endpoints. So the 2 endpoints and vertical. Now, Is that the only way to have done that with a relationship? No. I also could have made this line and this line equal, but for part of these tutorials, I want to show you that you do have options because it's the same thing. If we've locked both of these in on the left side and the right sides are vertical with each other, that line has to be equal. So it is doing the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that as my sketch. Highlight sketch 5. Click extrude. Click remove, click through all, and merge with all. And now it seems to be unhappy. Okay. Well, right now you can see it's not really doing what we want it to do. I'm going to just try to put the rest of it in. Okay, I don't know why it went red at that point in time, but let me back up for what I did. Okay, so sometimes we don't need to not be scared. I think it was trying to guess as to what I wanted. I'm not quite sure, but here's the deal. What we see is it is cutting back from that surface backwards, meaning if I let it do this, you'll notice it would only cut about half the tube. It didn't come to the front as well. Well, if I just switch the direction, now I'm only cutting that part and I'm not cutting the full area away that I need to cut away. So what I need to do, and it doesn't matter which way I start, but I need to add a second end position, okay? Which that means it starts to go the other direction as well. And I set that as through all also. So now it's going through all in both directions, which is why it's completely cutting it out exactly the way I need it. All right? And this would be what we're going to call the tube tabs. They kind of stick out like this is creating those tabs. Okay, those faces, all the faces, okay, the entire sketch, and then I accept it. And this is my hinge body. Okay, so this is the actual part that I'm going to need. And this is my first part. So one of the things that you're going to be asked to do to show that your part is exactly the right size is when you do your screenshot of this is please come to an isometric view, zoom in like this so I can see all the shapes. And there's no way for you to show me like all the sketches like we've done in the past. However, if you click the little scales down here that says display mass properties, what you should be able to do is where it says parts to measure, this is blue right now, down here it should only have one part, part 1. And if I click on it, okay, you should be able to see these different numbers. Now, because I haven't set my material, which I am going to show you how to do now. So I'm going to close mass properties. I'm going to click part 1. First off, when I right click on it, I can rename this, which calling it hinge body is a good idea. Please do that. I'm also going to right click where it says hinge body and go to assign material. This is going to give me a whole list of materials. Okay. Now I can look in here. I can also, I believe, search for brass. First brass is exactly what I want, just regular brass. Okay, and I'm going to accept that. Okay, my hinge body is now made of brass. Now if I click hinge body and I click mass properties, you will see I even have a mass here. Okay, and this is the mass that it should be. That is actually one of the things I'm going to look at when I grade your screenshot. So please do make sure that you assign brass, normal brass, again, not any of the fancy ones, the ones that just says brass, as the material, and then make sure mass properties is displaying. I'm now ready to take my screenshot and turn this in for my points. Here's the end of this video. We will be coming back to this part because we will actually use this to make our first assembly.